You are welcome to the Children and the Media podcast. If I'm being honest, I thought of different ideas I could incorporate to start the podcast, but I'm really feeling this intro vibe, like the high pitch at the end, podcast. So in case you're wondering that, this is a Children and Media podcast, why are we hearing song in the beginning? The thing is, the podcast is serious, but I figure that since it's about kids and my personality is slightly playful, we could just go with like a vibe somewhere in the middle that doesn't make it too serious and doesn't also make it too playful. So that's how we got here. Again, my name is Christabel Nnamdi and you are welcome to the CAM podcast. Yes, CAM, Children and Media, that's what it means. This episode, which is our first episode, is largely about information on me, the podcast host and owner, and the podcasts. I just really want to lay foundation to build the podcast on. So let's just get into it like fast. My name is Christabel. I love children. I've been in children's ministry. I think at this point, it's worthy to add that this podcast might have some aspects of my faith. I'm a Christian, and I believe that through scripture, there are different parts of scripture that address core issues on raising children, parenting, and offers wisdom to some of the modern day problems we are having in the children and media space. So just putting that out there. I have done some volunteering work with children, and I did my master's research on the influence of social media usage on parent-child relationships. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to regurgitate the things I said in the promo video, but yeah. This study that I did during my master's led to my interest in the children and media space. So now I blow bubbles and fight crime. Okay, no, I don't do that. I just stay updated on research, conversations, and much more happening in the children and media space. And I believe that it is important to share that information with every adult. That's why the podcast says the grown-ups that care about these conversations. The CAM podcast is just my expression of sharing, especially because I'm not impressed with how the children and media conversation is going on here in Nigeria. Globally, there's a lot of attention, but we are still not there yet. We need everybody to get on board with what we're doing and all the things that we're finding out and how to make society better for children. So onto the CAM podcast, like I said earlier, the name of the podcast is the Children and Media Podcast. I could not come up with anything catchier, please. I think this should suffice, and it is my own personal way of sharing information. So the podcast largely focuses on children, media, psychology, and policy. Most of the topics, the stories, the facts, the research, the interviews, the conversations will be around this. The media conversations will, of course, focus on television, digital technology, all forms of media that children interact with, online gaming, like just everything. Psychology is the angle on, what's happening in their minds, in the parents' minds, in the guardians' minds, just the psychological aspect. Policy is so interesting in conversations on children and media because what a government thinks, the rules they have set, the legal framework that protects children online, offline, plays a huge role in what we are doing. So we'll always have conversations on policy. And yeah, that's just that about the podcast. The goal really is for grown-ups like you and me to be educated on children and media issues that border or revolve around these concepts in one way or the other. Again, I am so excited for the conversations that we're going to be having. I feel like sharing so much, but I already promised myself to keep the podcast short. Some could be as short as 10 minutes, 15 minutes. We're not trying to do too much. We're not trying to overwhelm anybody. So yeah, I'll just start with some concepts that I think are great to note so that as we progress into future episodes, what I'm saying won't sound foreign. So a concept like parental monitoring. Parental monitoring is the awareness and supervision and involvement that parents maintain over their children's activities and behaviors. That might sound like a lot, but really, parental monitoring is just supervising your child when they're watching TV, using their iPad or etc. Really, and you don't have to be a parent to monitor. If you have a niece, a nephew, the time that you're watching what they're watching at the same time and just being sure that you know the content they're consuming, that's a form of monitoring. Parental mediation is just how parents actively guide their children to use technology. So basically, you're controlling their exposure, you're dictating how that goes at etc. So these are not hard concepts. Then I'd like to talk about share renting. So share, SHAERENTING. I almost mixed the spelling for a bit. But sharenting is the practice of parents, caregivers, or relatives sharing information about underage kids online. Who qualifies as an underage kid? I think it differs country by country. But in Nigeria, anybody less than 18 is underaged. Let me give you the perfect example of sharenting. Okay, I just need to add that sharenting includes sharing photos, videos, personal stories, and etc. about children online. So you know the cute Instagram page that you follow where the mother always posts, oh, she took her first steps today, she doesn't like eating corn, or post, we went for our first birthday party. That is an example of sharenting. So posting information about a child online is sharenting. Now, we're not here to talk about if it's good or if it's bad. If you stick around the podcast long enough, you will get to have an informed perspective on sharenting and many of these concepts, monitoring, mediation, and etc. But the goal of all of this is just to share that we need to be informed about how to expose children to the digital world. The honest truth is, the stats are telling us that we need to pay more attention to just how things are going generally in this space. And I'm going to just roll out a few statistics. This is not to scare you. And I think that's one of the things I wanted to say in this first episode of the podcast. We don't do fear here. We don't weaponize fear. I know that consciously or unconsciously, there are researchers or people in the industry who have projected fear to parents like, oh, your child might go blind if they this. Your child's attention span is getting thin out. Some of those things have some truth, have some backing. But over here, we don't project fear. What we project is the problem, and we talk about the solutions and the way forward. We don't do fear here. Just trying to get that out of the way. So yeah, let me just roll out a bit of statistics so that you understand that we do not just think, where do we research? Children and media. No, we are actually onto something. And I'll start with the Nigerian stats because most people don't believe that the children in Nigeria actually have a lot of digital exposure. So there are studies that have been done by the Nigerian Communications Commission. I am grateful for those studies because I used some of those numbers and some of their findings and etc. for my own research during my master's. And their study shows that the average Nigerian child spends 3 to 10 hours in front of screens. 3 to 10. So the average child, could be any age in Nigeria, has access to digital technology for 3 to 10 hours a day. That's actually a lot. It also shows that 30% of Nigerian children exhibit signs of digital dependency. Now, let me explain. To be dependent on something means that you are now reliant on it heavily for a certain function. So that means that 30% of Nigerian children are either depending on tech for gaming functions, entertainment functions, and etc. Now, while that might not look like a staggering figure to you, we are in Nigeria, the poverty capital of the world, in a place where we are supposedly not supposed to have this much technology lying around, and in that regard, moving to children, but here we are. I think for countries in the UK, the stats are way higher. 91% of 11-year-olds in the UK have an access to smartphones. And of course, screen time now increases because over there we have studies showing us that some of the children spend like 7 hours alone daily. They're averaging 7 hours in screen time. And it's not for academic purposes or anything else. It's for entertainment. So when you look at the numbers, when you look at the findings, we are onto something. And the only way for us as a society, as grown-ups, to find a middle ground is to dive deeper into these issues, to find out the root cause, find out what we need to do, and draft a way forward. It just occurred to me that I haven't even given like a solid definition of screen time. I know that most times when people talk about screen time, we only think of phones and tablets. I'm here to tell you that television is part of screen time. And as we go into other episodes, you're going to see that the generation that grew up on TV screen time is now the generation raising kids growing up on tablets, laptop, and iPad screen time. So the generation that grew up with screens is raising another generation growing up with screens. Quite interesting if you ask me. But screen time just refers to the amount of time a child spends looking at a screen. Whatever screen, gaming console, computer, tablet, smartphones, TVs, the amount of time. So when we talk about like the average screen time, most devices are able to generate like an average screen time. And if it's just the child that uses that device, it's easier to get the number. And researchers usually do like surveys, interviews, and collate these numbers for us to come to like a general conclusion. While there are different types of screen time, I'm not going to delve into that. There will be other episodes for that. But I really hope that everything I've said so far is helping or has helped to lay like a foundation on why we're here. This is what this podcast is about. We're about to talk on all things children, media, and just how this spills over into the larger society. The little kids today are going to be the adults tomorrow. So the work that we are doing is so important. And I really just want to appreciate you for seeing this as serious business. You might have a child, you might not have a child, you're probably just an auntie, an older sibling, but you care enough about the children around you, even the children you come across randomly in everyday life, to want to learn more about their interaction with technology, how to protect them, how to give the right exposure to technology. And this is me saying thank you. So I think we've already come to the end of the first episode. So quickly. Wow. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me. This episode is really just like a fundamental episode. In the coming ones, we're going to be getting to the real tea. And I feel like if you're Nigerian, you should stick around more, because a lot of the issues I'll be addressing, like the legal frameworks that protect children online and etc., some of them will be like tailored to the Nigerian audience. Of course, this gives room for a global audience, but I just wanted to put the word out there. Thank you so much for joining me. You are welcome to the Children and the Media podcast. I'm going to work on that soprano before the next episode, guys. I promise you, I'm going to shock you. But yes, thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you in the next 2 weeks. Bye.